All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Adventures Unpacked. We're Adventures Live. My name is Jeff. I'll be hosting this week, and with me is Nova.
Hello.
And we're going to be unpacking a little bit more about the story that we tell in Getaway, Noah's fun trip, kind of like a part two to Starved Rock, which is, we talk about the kayaking in the previous episode of Unpacked, where you kayak down the Illinois River, right? For, was it 2 separate days?
Yes. Yeah, it was a 2-day trip down the Illinois River.
Right. So since this trip follows directly after your kayak Starved Rock trip that we tell in that video, if you haven't seen that, go watch that previous video. It'll make this video make a little bit more sense. So tell me a little bit about the Getaway cabin where you start your video.
Yeah, absolutely. So this was kind of structured into our original trip of visiting Starved Rock State Park, is that we had an agreement that we were going to do 2 nights camping and kayaking, and then 2 nights within a cabin and visiting the actual park. And so we actually we were looking at a couple different options. I believe Starved Rock offers some lodges and stuff actually on the property, but we saw this ad for a company called Getaway Cabins, and I think just between that and the Airbnbs and the lodges, I think the Getaway cabin was the cheapest. So we decided to check that out. The time that we went down there for this trip, the company was called Getaway Cabins. Now they've been bought out by Marriott and they're now called Postcard Cabins. But for the simplicity of this video, I'm going to be calling them Getaway for this, because we eventually did go back for a second trip because we enjoyed the cabins so much. So they're called Getaway Cabins, and essentially they're like this renovated mini trailer that you might even be able to see it in the video on a wide shot, is that it's still on its wheels on blocks essentially, and they gutted this trailer and pretty much raised the roof on one side and added a huge window on it. So it's like a tiny house trailer, but it's got like all the amenities that one might need to enjoy the night out in the wilderness and glamp, right? I mean, it was essentially a half camping trip, half glamping trip. It had a full-size bed, hot water, running water, air conditioning, heat, and a shower and a mini kitchen.
What my first impression was, right? So when you were driving up to the cabin at the end of this last video, didn't look like much, So when, we get into this video and you really get to see the inside, that was surprising. Like you mentioned the amenities, right? The how clean everything was. It looks like there's a lot more room in there than it looks like there will be on the outside.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that it mirrors our experience when we actually got there. I think pulling up to the cabin, I mean, as you see in the end of Kayak Starved Rock, we are rushing to get out of our campsite to make checkout on that campsite and into the check-in for this cabin, which one of those we missed. I can't remember which. I think we missed the checkout of the campground, but it wasn't. They were very friendly about it. We just got off the river and we're ready to unwind for the night. So coming there, and when we booked it, we're kind of expecting, it's on the cheaper side. I think it was $100 a night, maybe somewhere around that ballpark. And we were expecting to have just this really small cabin and for it not to be much besides a bed to sleep in, and then we can have our adventure on the other side. But getting there, that was exactly what we felt. We get to the cabin and as you enter it, it feels like the bigger on the inside thing. Like they hiked up the roof a little bit and they put that window, which really added a lot to the space. It felt a lot more open than it really is. Physically, when you were there's probably only enough room for you guys to walk past each other, and there's a desk on one side and the kitchen on the other. There's very, very little room there, but just the quality of everything was really, really well thought out, and the placement of everything felt very comfortable. There was really no point where we felt claustrophobic or cramped.
That's awesome. Yeah, it seemed like it was a really comfortable place to, transition into after those 2 days on the river.
That hot shower, that first hot shower coming back, getting off the river was one of the best showers I've ever had. But I was surprised about the quality of the water pressure in the shower. So I don't need to go on for the next hour talking about the shower, but it was really nice. It was really, look, when you are camping, that's the one thing that you're like really missing is like hot water and a nice shower. And it is so nice. It's so nice, especially after an adventure of actually doing stuff, having that ability to wash off, but still be out in the wilderness. I mean, doesn't get much better than that.
True. So, we talked a little bit before about, your renowned cooking abilities around a campfire.
Please.
Kind of what you're known for around here. So tell me a little bit about the meals that you had that night?
Yeah, so we definitely had the opportunity to do more things than I usually would do when we're out camping, because we had like a full mini kitchen, which consisted of, when you rent the cabins, they have a sink with the hot water, cold water availability, a 2-stove burner, and then a variety of pots and cooking utensils there prepped for you, which is super nice. We kind of decided to just get the ingredients for a handful of different recipes and then do the prep actually at the cabin. Usually if I'm doing a bigger meal, I'll do the prep before going camping, or if it's a smaller meal, you can do it at the campfire. And although that we had a 2-stove burner, I do love a good campfire grill, and I think that's mostly how we made the majority of our food. That first night we started with toasted grilled cheese over the campfire, so that was just really easy 2 sourdough breads with a variety of cheese in the middle, wrap it in tinfoil, leave it over the campfire. And that's another thing that I want to give a 2 thumbs up about this cabin, is that not only do they have this beautiful cabin space that's big enough for me, I mean, it had everything that I needed to be comfortable. They also have a really cute campfire section outside with 2 chairs and a fire ring with a grill set on it. So that was extremely useful for all of our meals pretty much. They have separate packages when you get there. You just pay for your nights, but they have like additional stuff that you can use. They had like a s'mores kit that if you used it, they just add that to your payment, or they had extra like campfire wood ready to go in a separate box that kept it dry. They had the firewood and fire starters. We didn't end up using that because I bring my own because we went actual camping, so we had some left over. But just something that's a nice thought if somebody maybe doesn't get out as much, or they didn't plan on bringing stuff like that. They get there and they can still have the bonfire if they want. But the fire pit was really nice. It was all gravel paved, and the whole cabin is like nestled into the woods, so you're really tucked into your own space, because on the property there's actually a handful of different cabins all lined up. So as you're driving through, you're passing all the other cabins, and even though when you're driving through you can see all these cabins, when you get there it does feel very secluded depending on the cabin location. But that was very nice. So yeah, we did the grilled cheese the first night, campfire grilled non-pizza the second night. We did a couple desserts as well. I think I made it for you guys in Wyoming, if I'm not mistaken, the cinnamon roll apple pie. Did I make that for you guys? Yeah,
I think you did. That was really good.
And we did breakfast burritos. I think those were our big 3. In the video you'll see us setting out all the recipes and actually making these really simple, delicious non-pizza breads.
Yeah. No, that looked really tasty.
We made those again last week, actually, because I was editing this video and I was like, do you remember how good these things were? We need to do this again. So yeah, we made it last week.
So are the cabins in Starved Rock State Park?
So are they no, yeah.
How far away are they?
They are not in Starved Rock State Park. The Getaway cabins were actually about 18 minutes from the actual park. It wasn't on the actual property, but it was definitely close enough where the drive was worth it. One drive, 18 minutes there, spend the whole day in the park, and to have just a little bit of extra amenities that we might not have just like camping at the actual park site.
Seemed like it was worth the drive for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get into the park itself, because I think that's where the meat of the video is, and that's what I'm really interested in. So this first day that you're out hiking the trails, did you start at the visitor center, or did you just kind of dive right in?
I personally like to start at the visitor centers, no matter which park I'm at, especially if it's a new park, and specifically for the main reason of I am a map lover. I love having maps, especially when I'm actually at the location. Having a map is extremely useful. 1, to not get lost, and 2, to just kind of plan out what you want to see and kind of get an idea of it. So we picked up these really nice laminated maps that they use that you will actually see within the video. It's the same map, just a digital version of it. And it's got just a bunch of information about the park, locations, floral, fauna, all that. Starved Rock is known for kind of 3 main things. There's the Starved Rock Butte that's on the Illinois River, which is the first location that we saw. And then also for its sandstone canyons and waterfalls. Unfortunately, the waterfalls are caused from excess rainfall and snowmelt. And we went a bit later in the summer season. We went in July. The waterfalls tend to dry out around June to September. So we're kind of in that gray area of like, we're not sure if we're really going to see any waterfalls, if we're going to catch any. So our main goal was, if there were any running, try and figure out where those were. So we did start at the visitor center and talk to some of the rangers and just asked where would be the best chance of us seeing any of those waterfalls. And they recommended a handful of them that you see in the video. We start at French Canyon, we head over to Kaskaskia in Ottawa, and also St. Louis. And we had various degrees of luck of finding a waterfall.
Right. So you are chasing these waterfalls. Was it 3 separate canyons? Are they all like this? What is this, sandstone?
Yeah, so it's all St. Peter's sandstone, which is often beneath the soil. If I talked about it in our last episode, but in case anyone hasn't watched that, this area was carved out from glacier melt. An event called the Kankakee Torrent ripped through this area and exposed a lot of this sandstone. Then just from the running water and erosion developed this intricate canyon network. So yeah, these are all extremely, extremely soft sandstone canyons. Like literally, if you go and put your hand up on it, you can rub off some of the sandstone. And throughout the video, you might see some like carvings, and it's really easy to carve. There's moments where you see me climbing up a rock back to the path, and there's like almost like footsteps from just people naturally walking in it, wearing down into, footholds.
It's really cool.
Yeah, it was interesting to see.
Are these all like connecting canyons, or are you walking through forests between them?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. I'll throw up the map here to give a little bit of a better visual, and I'll just kind of hold this up for you, Jeff. The park is set up where it's very accessible via road. There's a road that drives through the park, and almost every stop has like a pull-off point to get on a trail. So along the river, there's a road that runs, and then all the colored lines are the trails. A majority of the canyons are separate, but a few of them are interconnecting. Like specifically the one that we went to at the end of our first day was the Council Overhang, and it continues on to Ottawa and Kaskaskia. We didn't do this, but I do believe there are interconnecting trails that run the length of the park, so you can hike through the woods and access the majority of the canyons.
You mentioned the amount of stairs that you all had to deal with on these trails. Would you say that they're fairly accessible for most people of average ability?
Absolutely. None of these trails were difficult by any means. I think most of them are labeled on here as moderate to easy. You might get a little winded. It is definitely a very interesting aspect of the park is its elevation change. It's somewhere where you wouldn't expect to be in the Midwest. A very stark contrast to the plains, the cornfields and farms that we're used to. Almost every trail is probably going to have some sort of stairs or incline or various degrees of elevation, but nothing that I would be too concerned about. I saw people of all walks of life there hiking the trails.
Crazy. I had no idea there was a park that was so cool and unique so close to Chicago.
Yeah, it's widely referred to like Illinois' hidden gem.
That's awesome. I mean, it sounds like the park is well designed to balance accessibility while also not, destroying the natural flow of those landscapes. I have to say, like, as someone who loves being outside and being out in these parks, people can sometimes ruin things, but they also add to it, right? Like, you're at somewhere special. There's a lot of people there. But it's interesting, like, did you find that even if something wasn't as jaw-dropping amazing, when you were more isolated, were some of the like smaller things, more mundane things, more beautiful?
It was kind of an interesting balance of the two. There's a shot, and I think it will be the thumbnail of the video. There's a sandstone wall covered in handprints. There's mud that piles up at the bottom of that wall, and people have dipped their hand in the mud and left handprints all over the wall. Because it was so empty, me and Alyssa had a really cool opportunity to put our handprints on the wall as well. And although that was just us there, it felt very connected to the community and other people who experienced Starved Rock and put their hand on the wall. Hey there, Noah here. Sorry to interrupt the episode. I just wanted to give you guys a quick reminder that you can watch the full adventure behind this podcast over on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/adventureslive. And if you're thinking, hey, I would like to do something like this myself, we've got you covered. Head over to our Patreon and you can gain access to our exclusive adventure packets. These include our trip itineraries, detailed maps, and all the extra info that we found helpful while planning these trips. Plus, we got a collection of free how-to guides over on our Patreon as well. They're perfect if you're looking to build your skill and start planning trips of your own. You can find us on Patreon at patreon.com/adventureslive. All right, that's enough for me. Let's get back into the episode.
Sounds like a really special moment.
It was definitely one of the surprises Starved Rock had for me.
So I think that naturally brings us into, the second day, right? So you're looking for, some of these more powerful waterfalls. Is that the main mission when you're thinking about it? You wake up, you're like, okay, I really want to see this stronger waterfall. Or was it really the caves that those people were murdered in.
We were really just trying to squeeze in as much as we could on that first day. The second day, we were going to spend half the day at the park and then pack up and leave because our cabin rental was up at that day. So the first day, we're really aiming to get as much in as we can, find a waterfall if we can. And we had, not great luck with that. But on the second day, the big draw was, hey, let's go see the St. Louis Canyon where this very famous case happened, right? Where the 3 women came down for a vacation from Chicago and had the unfortunate early deaths, and their bodies were found in that cave that's just off of the waterfall. That was on our list the whole time. We were very anxious about it. We were listening to podcasts about the case, just like learning about it on the way up here. So it was fresh on our mind. Through the planning process and telling people where we're going, that was always the thing that people were bringing up, is like, oh, that was where the murder happened. It was kind of a toss-up of, hey, do we want to go there? Do we want to check it out? Yeah, that would be cool. It's also like, ooh, heebie-jeebies, right? But we did decide to do that. We had time the last day, which worked out well because I believe that was the longest trail we did, which was about 1.5 miles. So that gives you an idea of like how accessible this park was. If that the longest trail we did was a 1.5 mile.
Wow, that is still very accessible.
Yeah. It's a catch-22. Like we talked about it with Yellowstone in the past. It's like, oh, it starts to feel more like an amusement park almost versus like a nature preserve. This, I kind of have an opposite feeling growing up in this area and just hearing people talk about it, is a lot of times people don't think there is nature here. There's nothing to do here besides the cornfields and the farms or whatever. But having such an accessible park that has such unique environmental and geological features compared to the rest of the area, I think that's a really cool way to get people into the park, learn about nature, get involved with nature in their backyard that they might not had the opportunity or even the thought of doing. So I think that's something really cool that Starved Rock offers for this area, right?
In some way, it's kind of like a larger scale concept of this idea we were talking about earlier about there being less people, right? You can enjoy more mundane or the small moments even more. You can appreciate them in a different way.
Yeah.
I think it's similar, right? Like you're mostly surrounded by cornfields and flat ground and farmland, right? Or a major city like Chicago. But having this area that you get to really appreciate because it's not like everywhere, right? You're not surrounded by mountains and crazy things. So you're like, wow, this is really special.
Well, it's so accessible even for people who aren't interested in that world to get out and experience this, that might open their mind to, hey, not everything has to be this big grand park to have these really impactful and important environments.
Right. So you said it's like 1.5 miles. Was it to the murder caves? And then from there, like, is that where we see you starting to record, going into them?
Yes, that canyon and the waterfall is where the cave is. It was all one larger canyon with the waterfall and the cave. So I'm going to jump in here and give a quick overview of the Starved Rock murder case. This is a huge and very complicated case. So what I'm about to get in here is just very surface level, just a brief overview of what this case actually is. So if you are at all interested in true crime or true crime within the outdoors, I highly recommend looking more into this. This is a very interesting and just messy case. It's all over the place. But I will give a content warning. This case is very gruesome and there is some very strong topics in here. I'm not going to be getting into all the details here. I'm going to try and keep it as surface level as possible. So let's just jump in so you guys get an idea of what I'm talking about with this cave that we visited. On March 14th, 1960, 3 women, Mildred Lindquist, Lillian Odding, and Frances Murphy, checked into the Starved Rock Lodge for a 4-day vacation. All were from Riverside, Illinois, and belonged to the same church group. They arrived at the lodge around noon, and the weather was cold and a light snow was falling. The desk clerk checked them in, and a bellhop helped carry their bags up to adjoining rooms 109 and 110. According to the desk clerk, the women mentioned that they were planning to eat at the dining hall before heading out on a hike. This remark concludes the official timeline of the women's movement within the park. Whether they returned to the dining hall or when they actually left the lodge remains up for debate. They were last seen around lunchtime. On March 15th, the following morning, snow continued to fall. Lillian's husband, George Odding, called the lodge, concerned after not hearing from his wife. A receptionist, whose identity remains unknown, told him that the women were seen at breakfast and were likely somewhere in the park. Later in the afternoon, George called again. He still hadn't heard back from his wife and reiterated his concerns. The receptionist said that she would leave a note for the women in their rooms. On March 16th, Lillian's brother-in-law, Herman Odding, called the lodge, requesting that their rooms and parking lot be checked. The park staff found the rooms untouched, beds still made, luggage still packed, and Lillian's Cadillac was still parked outside, covered in undisturbed snow. Alarmed, Herman contacted George and the other husbands. Law enforcement was quickly notified, and by 9 a.m., a search party was organized. One group, led by Henry Walford, a warden from a local youth camp, along with several boys from the camp, had their car stuck near the mouth of the St. Louis Canyon, but they continued on foot. Inside the canyon, just off to the side of the frozen waterfall, they discovered the bodies of the 3 women. They were partially found buried in snow in a shallow cave-like recess. All 3 women had been bound by the wrist and bludgeoned to death, presumably with a heavy tree branch. This was the cave that we visited at the end of Getaway. In March 1960 to early 1961, the state and local authorities launched a major investigation. There were few leads, but one early clue was the twine used to bind the victims' wrists. It was reportedly similar to the twine used in the lodge kitchen. All lodge employees were then given polygraph tests, and originally everyone passed. Later, a second round of polygraph tests were conducted. Again, all staff passed except one this time. Attention eventually turned towards Chester Weger, a 21-year-old dishwasher who worked at the lodge. Authorities also noted that Weger had previously been investigated in connection to another alleged assault near the park. Stains found on his jacket were tested and confirmed to be human blood. However, DNA testing wasn't available at the time, so the source of the blood could not be identified. Weger was brought in for questioning without being told that he was under arrest. After a lengthy investigation reportedly lasting more than 24 hours, Weger signed a confession. According to his signed statement, Weger claimed that he encountered the 3 women while they were hiking in St. Louis Canyon on March 14th. He said he followed them with the intention of robbing them, and when one of the women screamed, he claimed he panicked and attacked them. He said he used a tree limb as a weapon, striking all 3 multiple times. Weger told investigators he dragged their body into a small cave-like alcove and covered them with snow and brush. He also reportedly described details of the crime scene that investigators believed only the killer would know, including the position of the bodies and the approximate location of the murder weapon. This part has always stood out to me. After the confession, Weger was taken back to the canyon to reenact the crime for police and photographers, a moment captured in now famous black and white images. But within days, he recanted his confession. The investigators actually laid down in the positions that the bodies were found while Weger stood over them reenacting the crime. There's nothing like convincing people that someone's guilty than having pictures of them pretending to commit the crime. So weird to me. But within days, he recanted his confession, saying that it had been forced after hours of pressure, threats, and exhaustion during a marathon interrogation. Despite the lack of physical evidence tying him to the crime scene, the confession played a critical role in his conviction. In March 1961, Chester Weger was convicted of the murder of Lillian Otting and sentenced to life in prison. He was not tried for the other 2 deaths, and the prosecution's case relied heavily on his confession, which remained controversial. During the following years, Weger consistently maintained his innocence. Over the decades, various appeals and parole attempts were denied. The case remained a subject of debate, especially regarding the reliability of the confession and absence of forensic evidence. In 2020, after nearly 60 years in prison, Chester Weger was granted parole. He was 80 years old at the time of his release, and in that same year, new DNA testing was conducted on the evidence from the crime scene. According to the reports, hair samples found on the victims did not match Weger's. These findings have renewed public and legal interest in the case, with some calling for a full reinvestigation. Today, the Starved Rock murders remain one of Illinois' most haunting unsolved cases. Some believe that Chester Weger was the lone killer. Others believe that the real perpetrator, or perpetrators, were never brought to justice. What's certain is that the events of March 1960 left a lasting impact on the community, and key questions remain unanswered to this day. Now, there's a lot of controversy with this case. I don't really have an opinion one way or the other. Chester Weger's background is too convoluted to say he's fully innocent, but there's some very odd occurring things in this case. The mishandling of the investigation and his interrogation raised big red flags to me. And what I realized being in the actual park that I never heard anyone talk about is that this canyon is on the far side of the park, right next to the highway. So if it wasn't Chester Weger, someone easily could have parked near the highway where I parked, hiked down half the trail to St. Louis Canyon, committed these crimes, hiked back up to their car and got on the highway and been gone. That's just an interesting thing that stuck out to me when I was at the park. Now, the official story is that Chester Weger followed the women on their hike from the visitor center all the way to the edge of the park, but to me it makes a lot more sense if someone utilized the highway as an entry and exit point for this crime. Anyways, thanks for joining me. Let me know if you want to hear more about this story, and let's get back to the episode.
What was it like being standing in the cave?
In the cave was It's such an eerie feeling. Watching people like climb into the cave because it's right next to the waterfall. I wonder how many people have no idea that what happened in that cave. And within the cave, even because it's all that same really soft sandstone, there's just carvings all over the inside of the cave. People writing their names, their initials, going in there, knowing what happened there in the 60s, standing in that location. It's hard not to put your head space there, and just seeing all these other names of people. And oddly, my name was carved outside of the cave, which I did not do, I promise. But it was just like a weird moment where I'm walking up to the cave and I see my name down on the floor. But it was definitely an odd feeling. And something that I think captured that for me fully was a little before I entered the cave. I walked up the hill on the other side of the cave, and I stood in the exact position that the photographer took the crime scene photos. So being able to stand and have my camera framed almost the exact same way, and having my phone and the photo up on one side and dropping it and having that same perspective was really, really weird. You're balancing these feelings of, oh, wow, this is where it happened, to also, wow, I'm in this really cool place. How could this have happened here?
It's interesting that there's not like a plaque or anything there, you know, like not necessarily in the rock, but maybe just like right in front of the cave to give people an idea of what happened.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I didn't see anything of the sort, but I can also see the idea of like, hey, we don't want to draw more attention to this than, you know, already has. It's almost like a stain on the park, right?
You know, this kind of gets to the end of your trip there. Is there anything that you didn't catch on camera that you want to talk about, like something that happened that, well, you know, when you weren't recording, or something that you wanted to note?
As you might be able to relate to this on any of these adventures, I can't recommend people go there enough, because we are not capturing the full story of it, right? We're capturing our story and what we're trying to tell there, but there's a lot in the park, and I only did a handful of trails, so there was even more that even off camera I didn't get to experience. Just kind of the idea of go out if you're in this area at all. If you're interested in this park, check it out. If you're passing by, I think it's worth your time. For a state park, it might surprise you.
And on that note, one way that they can do that more readily is to check out our adventure packets that are available on our Patreon. It's one of the ways that you can support us if you're interested in taking on some of these trips and replicating them yourself. It sounds like this is one that you can very easily replicate, you know, if you're within an hour, 2-hour drive of this area. So would you recommend people go to Starved Rock, even if they're a couple-hour drive away?
Oh yeah. I mean, I took the 1.5-hour drive from Chicago, and that was worth my time. I would have driven farther for it. I've driven farther for less.
So I gotta ask, after having the kayak Starved Rock experience and now Getaway, would you say you enjoyed kayaking or hiking more in Starved Rock?
Oh man, that's a tough question. That's a really tough question. I'm gonna give you kind of like a non-answer, because I think I prefer kayaking. I'm a big kayaker. I love being on a boat, especially on a river. What I will say about the hiking was that I was surprised. I thought I knew kind of what I was getting into going into this park. Like, I've seen similar types of sandstone canyons just living in this area, visiting different places, much smaller scale than these were. I was definitely taken back about the size of these things and how extensive the canyon systems actually were. So being able to go there and experience that and being surprised in the Midwest is really a cool experience.
Yeah, it was a very political answer there. All right, well, cool. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about this adventure? Anything you want the people to know about your experience or Kayak Starved Rock?
About the actual murder case, I hope that it was thorough enough where it didn't take up too much time, but you kind of got an idea of the actual case. And if you are into true crime like that at all, like I am, definitely go check that out. There's more than enough information out there on it that I'm not going to take the time and really do a deep dive into. There's podcasts, documentaries, there's more than enough. So if you're interested in that case, go check it out, because it's a thought provoker. When you get down to the suspects, there's a lot of interesting points, and I've gone back and forth of who I think did it. As you learn about the case, you see that there's just a lot more to it than maybe a mishandling of the case.
I did not know that this was an unsolved murder. That's crazy.
It kind of is. They closed the case and they put someone away for it for 60 years. and I believe they just got out. He's claimed his innocence, but they got him to confess after not telling him that he's arrested, and he claims it was a false confession. And then they dragged him back out to the canyon and had him reenact what they told him to do with the press there. So there, if you look it up, you can find pictures of this guy reenacting a murder that he says he didn't commit in the cave, with like the cops laying down pretending to be the women.
What?
Yeah, and that was all before the hearing happened.
That is bizarre.
It was a very bizarre case. One more thing I'd like to add that I don't think I captured, especially in this video, is that Starved Rock is right next to two other state parks. There's Buffalo Rock State Park and Matizan State Park. So also check those out. They're smaller state parks compared to Starved Rock, but beautiful in their own right. And we lucked out. We visited in July, and on our way out, we heard word that someone recommended, hey, check out Matizan because they do annual sunflowers every year. And this is around the time where they're blooming. So we stopped by Matizan on our way out, and there was just fields upon fields of sunflowers. So if you're interested in this area, check out some of the other parks and see if they have anything cool going on, or just check them out, because all nature is cool to me. So still, it's definitely a smaller park. People might know it from the murder case or whatever, but a lot of people might not know it because it is a state park. So if not, I hope I get to introduce some people to this location, this area, some of the stories and lore that go along with it, and hopefully that encourages some people to get out there and adventure on their own.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to leave it off. Thank you so much for joining us. Once again, we are Adventures Live, and this has been Adventures Unpacked. Looking forward to seeing you in the next one.
You can find us on all of the socials. We are at Adventures Live Productions on Instagram and Facebook. We are at Adventures Live on TikTok, X, and Bluesky. We have a Discord called the ALP Campground. The link is in the description below. And you can find us on Patreon for our adventure packets, itineraries, and any bonus content at Adventures Live Productions. Thank you guys so much.